And we welcome in our next guest, Seth Schachner, Managing Director at Strat Americas and Digital Business Executive. Thank you for being with us. So we have something big brewing all about intellectual property, it's copyright infringement and all of this. What's the backstory here quickly, and why does it matter?
Yeah, great to be here, Nicole. You know, it's early stage in AI, and I think the entertainment and media industry in general kind of hasn't gotten its arms around it as a business yet. And what I think a lot of entities are trying to do are seeding the grounds for it to become, a legitimate business. And that's what these lawsuits are about, in my view. They want to try and create the conditions, by which they can ultimately partner, use, and, help these new technologies become part of the ecosystem. So it may look like a lawsuit at first, but I bet it's probably got a more constructive element behind it.
So, alleging that Midjourney stole countless copyrighted works to train its AI engine. How do you prove that? Are we going to see many sort of suits of this kind? Is it sort of detrimental to the progress and growth and actually the monetization of AI?
It's all the above. I mean, what's happening is that, these AI models, even the biggest, like OpenAI and the ones that come out of Microsoft, kind of work B2B and enterprise. They set up platforms and people can build all sorts of apps on top of them, good or bad. And these things need content, IP, not just entertainment content, but content to train their engines on, their language models on, if you will. And, unfortunately in the States and other parts of the world, the copyright law that, folks like you and me who work in media and entertainment would kind of take for granted aren't really established yet around, what's a copyright if a machine makes it, basically. And so there have been these large scale, training that have been happening basically from these AI models on everyone's intellectual property. And it's gotten to the point now, at least with Hollywood, where they're starting to spit out some kind of serious and potentially frightening things for the industry. It could be potentially disruptive. This specific one is an image generator, so you can call up Shrek and it'll spit something out quickly. But there are much more sophisticated video models that are in the works for it as well. And I think the real thing is that if you don't kind of catch this stuff early, and deal with it in a constructive way, not just lawsuits, but allowing your creators, your studios to, experiment with it, it could be pretty destructive down the road. So that's actually what's happening here. And I think this specific suit, I don't think it's called Midjourney, is a particularly big one. I think the music industry where I come from tends to go after the money first, and the suits there for audio, one of them has got a lot of capital in it. So I think there's a lot of cross currents going on in terms of how to get arms around this right now.
Yeah, understood. I mean, does it vary from industry to industry? We're talking more about media and entertainment. Is there another industry using AI that won't have these same sort of issues? Maybe it's healthcare. Maybe it's something else. I don't know.
You could do everything from train healthcare workers to pilots and medical care. There's all kinds of good stuff. I think the medical applications I've seen have been pretty wonderful. I was just with some execs who are sales execs here in LA this weekend and are telling me about how productive it is for it to be used in sales and business development. So yeah, for sure, there are absolutely different uses for it, and it kind of depends on the industry. It's hard to generalize, but for media, I mean, I'm a pretty strong believer that you got to figure out a way to at least license it. But I think the interesting thing from colleagues I hear in Silicon Valley is, you can't be too heavy-handed about this because you have to balance it against, innovation and not crushing these things. And I think that's where the country needs some regulation, probably some firmer AI laws and copyright laws. Some of the states, Tennessee, have come out, music, for example. They've done some acts called No Fakes that I think have been helpful. But this is for sure potentially disruptive if it isn't kind of, corralled in terms of some type of regulation and then partnerships in the industry.
When does this become a problem to stock prices? I mean, does it hit the bottom line somehow? I think, as investors are listening to this, they're going to want to know the major question. I mean, we could go through all the innuendos of this one or that one took this copyright, but in the end, how much does it really matter? I mean, you did say there were a lot of cross currents. Microsoft and OpenAI are behind some of the important AI platforms. The New York Times sued OpenAI. Amazon partnered for AI with the New York Times. So there's a lot that goes on. But these names, Microsoft, Disney, people want to buy the stocks, and they don't want to hear that there's some big hurdle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it can become a problem. I mean, to state the obvious, if there's large scale infringement around content, I mean, that's obviously something that becomes very problematic. Again, I came from the music industry and I go back 20, 25 years. We struggled with this with Napster, basically, and it almost destroyed our business. I don't really see that happening right now, but there have been, a lot of things like fakes and a lot of volumes being shared around. I think that's an issue. But even more seriously, if you look at, say, the tech titans that you mentioned, whether they're chatbots or AI, to me, most of these things need to be moderated in some way with human moderation, not with AI. Meta has had some pretty frightening and upsetting things come out about what its chatbots are capable of doing, particularly for younger audiences, right? And that's definitely not good for the stock price. So I think, it kind of depends on what you're looking at. In the core industries that I'm experienced in entertainment, I tend to see AI, provided that it's kind of partnered and there's some regulations around it, as a really helpful part of the ecosystem for things like production and cost reduction. And there's a ton of cool things that artists and creatives can do around it. But it's sort of early to make big generalizations around it.
I know you're following so many companies all at the same time, whether it's music and streaming and all these things. Just tell me, what names do you think are real winners for 2025? We finish by Christmas time. We say, you know what? Really a great showing by what companies?
Oh, good question. I mean, I'm still a fan of Universal Music Group in entertainment. I think, they're very, very strongly positioned. Sony, my alma mater, I think comes out of Japan, so it's a little bit more difficult to recommend from the American markets. In the entertainment business, I'm still quite a big believer in Disney because I think, Mr. Iger and his team have just done a terrific job with kind of aligning all their assets, that they're going against the grain of what some of their competitors are doing. So I'm still a big believer in that. And, I've also worked at Microsoft, and I think Satya has done just a tremendous job with, enterprise business, basically, and has really rationalized what the company's strategy is. So those are probably three that I'm a fan of. So.
Thank you. Seth Schachner, Managing Director of Strat Americas and Digital Business Executive. Thanks for joining us here on the show today. Good to see you, Seth. Thanks.